Far away in the deep universe, there was a shining planet called Valora. It was a world full of light, wisdom, and great technology. The people of Valora were strong and beautiful, with glowing skin and calm minds. They lived in peace under the rule of the High Council, who made sure everyone followed the laws that kept their world safe. Among these people were two sisters, Arina and Lunara. They were not just any girls. They were daughters of a respected family known for serving the council. Arina was the older sister, brave and curious. She always asked questions about life beyond their planet. Lunara was softer, more caring, and always followed her sister's lead. The two shared a strong bond. They never made decisions without each other. But one thing set them apart from others on Valora. They were fascinated by Earth. From their planet's observatory, they would watch Earth spinning in the darkness of space. They loved to see the oceans, forests, and cities full of life. Irina would often say, "Humans are full of emotion. They cry, they laugh, they fight, but they love with all their hearts." Lunara would smile and answer, "That's what makes them beautiful." However, contact with humans was forbidden. The High Council believed humans were not ready to know about other worlds. The sisters were warned many times to stay away from Earth's communication signals, but their curiosity grew stronger. One night, Arina secretly used a forbidden device to send a soft signal toward Earth's orbit, just to listen to the sounds of human life. She wanted to hear music, laughter, or even voices, but that one act changed their lives forever. The signal was detected by the council's monitors. When the sisters were brought before the High Council, the hall was silent. The leaders looked down at them with disappointment. "You broke the law," the High Chancellor said sternly. "You used our technology to reach out to another world." Arina tried to explain that she meant no harm. She only wanted to understand humans, to learn from them. Lunara stood beside her, trembling but loyal. The council discussed their punishment for a long time. Finally, they decided the sisters must face the one lesson all proud beings must learn: humility. "You will be sent to Earth," said the Chancellor. "You will live among humans, not as goddesses, but as ordinary beings. You will have no powers, no status, and no help. You will live their life and understand their struggles." The sisters were shocked. To them, Earth was a distant dream, not a place to live. "How long must we stay?" Lunara whispered. "Until you learn what it means to live with compassion," the council replied. The punishment was not meant to destroy them, but to teach them something their proud hearts had forgotten. The next morning, Arina and Lunara were taken to the planet's departure chamber. Their shining armor was removed and replaced with simple human clothes. Their glowing eyes dimmed, and their powers were sealed inside crystal bracelets that would only open when they had truly changed. A beam of light surrounded them, and before they could speak another word, they were gone, shot across space in a small silver pod. When they woke, they found themselves lying in a forest on Earth. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of pine trees and wet soil. The sun was brighter and warmer than they had ever imagined. Birds sang above their heads and water flowed gently nearby. Arina looked around, amazed. "So this is Earth," she said softly. Lunara, still dizzy, touched the ground and felt the roughness of dirt. "It's real," she whispered. But as the hours passed, the beauty of Earth also showed its harsh side. They had no food, no home, and no one to guide them. Their pod had disappeared, leaving them alone in a world they didn't understand. Arina tried to act strong, but fear slowly grew inside her. "We'll be fine," she told her sister. "We just need to find people." Lunara followed, clutching her bracelet, her heart full of uncertainty. After a long walk, they reached a small coastal town. The streets were filled with people, laughing, talking, and living their daily lives. The sisters tried to blend in, but their way of speaking and strange calmness made people curious. A kind old woman saw them sitting by a shop and offered them bread. "You girls look lost," she said. They didn't know how to thank her properly, so they just bowed their heads. That small act of kindness touched them deeply. On Valora, everything was perfect, but they had never felt this simple warmth from a stranger before. Days turned into weeks. The sisters found a small place to stay near the harbor. Arina started working in a flower shop, surrounded by colors and scents she had never known. She learned that each flower had meaning: love, hope, apology, and friendship. She began to see that emotions, though messy, made humans truly alive. Lunara helped a local mechanic who fixed boats. The man was patient and often told her stories about the sea, teaching her how to repair broken engines. She learned the value of hard work and how much effort humans put into survival every day. At night, they would walk by the sea watching the stars. Irina would whisper, "Do you think the council is watching us?" Lunara smiled faintly. "Maybe they are. But maybe they want us to see that this life has something to teach us." Even though life on Earth was not easy, both sisters began to feel something change inside them. They laughed with humans, felt pain when others suffered, and understood how beautiful imperfection could be. They were no longer the proud daughters of Valora. They were simply two girls learning to live, but deep inside they still missed their home. The stars reminded them of who they once were, and sometimes they wished to return. Yet they didn't know that their true story was only beginning. Earth would not just be their punishment. It would become the place where they would discover love, courage, and the meaning of being truly alive. Life on Earth slowly began to shape the two sisters in ways they had never imagined. Irina and Lunara were still strangers in a world full of noise, color, and emotion. Every morning they woke up early to begin their new routines, trying to fit into the human world. The little town by the coast became their home, though they often felt like they didn't belong. The people there were kind but curious, and the sisters had to hide their true identities carefully. Irina worked in a small flower shop owned by a gentlewoman named Martha. The shop smelled of roses and jasmine, and the air was always filled with soft music. At first, Irina didn't understand why people bought flowers for things like love, apology, or celebration. On her planet, emotions were expressed through logic and light, not through gifts. But here, each flower told a story. A red rose for love, white lilies for remembrance, yellow daisies for friendship. Slowly, she began to understand that humans used beauty to express feelings they couldn't say with words. Martha treated her kindly. She would often tell Irina, "Flowers speak when the heart cannot." Irina listened quietly and wondered how humans could be so fragile and yet so strong. She learned how to wrap bouquets, handle customers, and smile even when tired. Every day she felt more connected to this strange world, though part of her heart still longed for the skies of Valora. Lunara, on the other hand, worked at a small boat repair shop owned by an old man named Robert. He was a retired mechanic with rough hands and kind eyes. The smell of oil, metal, and sea salt filled the air around his workshop. At first, Lunara found the work difficult. The machines were loud, heavy, and confusing. But Robert had patience. He showed her how to clean tools, fix small parts, and tighten bolts. "You've got steady hands," he would say. "You learn fast." Lunara admired how humans used their strength not just to build, but to help. Many fishermen came to Robert's shop asking for help repairing their boats before storms. They always thanked him sincerely, and Lunara saw how kindness worked like energy. One good deed led to another. On Valora, life had been perfect but cold. Here it was messy but full of heart. In the evenings, the sisters would meet near the shore. They'd sit on the sand watching the sun melt into the sea. The ocean waves reminded them of the energy currents on their home planet, though softer, more emotional. Irina often collected seashells, fascinated by their shapes. Lunara liked to draw patterns in the sand. "It feels peaceful here," Lunara once said, her eyes glowing faintly in the twilight. Irina nodded. "Yes. Maybe the council wanted us to see this kind of peace and the one that comes from living, not ruling." But not everything was easy. Humans sometimes misunderstood them. Their quiet nature made some townspeople suspicious. A few whispered that the sisters were hiding something. Once, when Irina accidentally lifted a flower pot too easily, a man nearby stared in shock. She quickly pretended it wasn't strange, but she could tell the man noticed her unnatural strength. From that day, they were more careful. They avoided showing even the smallest sign of their old powers. Money was also a struggle. Their wages were small, and they had to live simply. Some nights they shared one loaf of bread and a bowl of soup between them. Yet despite the hardship, they found joy in small things: the sound of rain, the laughter of children, the warmth of the sun. These were feelings they had never experienced on Valora, where everything was perfect but distant. Irina began to see the beauty in imperfection. Once she watched Martha comfort a young girl who had broken a vase in the shop. Instead of scolding her, Martha smiled and said, "Don't worry. We can always fix what's broken." That simple sentence stayed in Irina's heart. On Valora, broken things were replaced. On Earth, they were repaired, with patience, love, and care. Lunara also grew fond of the people she worked with. Robert became like a father figure to her. He would tell her stories about his youth, how he had lost friends in storms but never gave up fixing boats because he loved the sea too much to leave it. "Life always throws you into deep water," he said one evening, tightening a bolt. "But you learn to swim when you stop fearing the waves." Lunara never forgot those words. Over time, the sisters began to change inside. They laughed more. They helped others. They even joined the townspeople during festivals. Once, during a summer celebration, they danced by the bonfire with everyone else. The music was strange but cheerful. For a moment, they forgot who they really were. They were not aliens. They were just two young women enjoying life under the stars. Still, at night, they often talked about home. Irina would look up at the sky and say, "Do you think they're watching us?" Lunara would smile softly. "Maybe. But maybe they want us to live, not just exist." There was a calm in her voice that made Irina realize how much her sister had grown. One evening, a storm came over the sea. The wind howled and the waves crashed hard against the rocks. Irina and Lunara helped Martha and Robert close their shops and protect the boats. The townspeople worked together through the night, tying ropes, moving supplies, and keeping everyone safe. When it was over, the sunrise came, golden and peaceful. The sisters stood on the wet sand watching the light spread over the water. Lunara turned to Irina and said, "I think I understand now. The humans, they survive because they help each other. They fall, but they stand up again." Irina smiled and placed a hand on her sister's shoulder. "Yes, and maybe that's the lesson we were sent to learn." From that day on, the sisters no longer saw Earth as a place of punishment. They began to see it as a place of discovery, a world that showed them what it meant to feel alive. They were no longer just trying to survive. They were learning to belong. And somewhere deep in their hearts, they knew that something even greater was waiting for them, something they had never experienced before. Love. One calm evening after the storm, the town began to return to its normal life. The sea was peaceful again, and the scent of salt filled the air. Irina and Lunara had grown used to this world now, its warmth, its people, and its simple beauty. But even though their days were full of work and laughter, something still felt missing. They didn't yet understand what that missing piece was, until two strangers entered their lives and quietly changed everything. Irina was sweeping the front of the flower shop one afternoon when she noticed a man standing by the window. He had paint stains on his shirt, and his eyes were fixed on the roses. He looked lost in thought, as if each petal carried a memory. When Irina asked if he needed help, he smiled shyly and said, "I'm sorry, I was just looking. The color of these flowers reminds me of the sunset." His name was Eli, a quiet artist who lived near the cliffs and painted the ocean almost every day. Eli was not like other people Irina had met. He spoke softly, as if he was afraid his words might disturb the air. He bought a small bunch of roses and returned the next day for more, not because he needed them, but because he wanted to see her again. Over time, they began to talk about simple things, colors, light, and the beauty of nature. Irina admired the way Eli saw the world, not through power or logic, but through feeling. He found beauty in small details, like the way sunlight touched the petals or how raindrops sparkled on the glass. Once, he invited her to see his paintings. His small cottage near the cliffs was filled with canvases, oceans under the moon, stormy skies, quiet villages, and endless stars. When Irina saw a painting of the night sky, she froze. It looked almost like her home planet, Valora, with the same bright constellations. "You painted this from your dreams?" she asked softly. Eli nodded. "Yes. I always felt like there's something out there calling to me." Irina's heart ached. She wanted to tell him everything, but she couldn't. Still, in that quiet moment, something gentle began to grow between them, a connection beyond words. Meanwhile, Lunara's days at the workshop were changing too. One morning, Robert introduced her to someone new, a tall man with strong arms and calm eyes named David. He had once been a soldier, but left his old life after losing too many friends in battle. Now he helped repair boats and trained young workers. He was kind, but there was sadness behind his smile. "You must be Lunara," he said warmly. Robert told me you're the fastest learner here. At first, Lunara was shy around him. She wasn't used to talking much, but David's patience made her comfortable. He showed her how to fix engines, paint hulls, and read the weather by watching the clouds. The sea can change its mood in seconds, he told her one day. You have to respect it or it will remind you who's stronger. She listened carefully, sensing that his words weren't just about the ocean but about life itself. As days passed, David noticed the quiet strength in Lunara. She was calm but determined, always helping others before herself. Once, when a fisherman injured his hand, Lunara quickly tore her scarf and wrapped it around the wound, comforting him. David watched her and thought, she's different, not from here but full of kindness. The two began spending time together after work. Sometimes they walked along the harbor, watching the boats float on the glowing water. David told her stories from his past, how he once dreamed of flying, how he lost hope, and how he found peace near the sea. Lunara listened closely, her heart softening each time she heard his voice. She couldn't explain it, but being near him made her feel safe, something she hadn't felt since leaving Valora. Back at the flower shop, Martha began to notice Irina's smiles whenever Eli came by. You like that young painter, don't you? Martha teased gently one morning. Irina blushed and shook her head. He's just kind. He sees the world differently. Martha chuckled. That's how it starts, dear. Sometimes the heart sees what the eyes cannot. Those words stayed with her. Irina started to realize she looked forward to seeing Eli every day. When he wasn't around, the world seemed quieter, a little emptier. She didn't understand this feeling. Valora didn't have emotions like this. But on Earth it made her heart race. Once, while helping him carry a painting home, she tripped slightly and he caught her arm. For a moment their eyes met and the world seemed to stop. Neither of them spoke, but something warm and bright passed between them. Lunara was also changing, though she didn't admit it at first. She had always been gentle, but now she laughed more. David noticed how her eyes lit up when she talked about the stars or the sea. You look at the world like it's new, he said once. She smiled softly. It is new. To me, everything here feels like the first time. He didn't understand what she meant, but he admired her sincerity. One evening, David took Lunara to see the lighthouse. The sky was full of stars and the waves shimmered below. Whenever I feel lost, David said, I come here. The light always brings me back. Lunara looked up at the stars, her eyes reflecting their glow. Where I come from, she whispered. The stars guide us too. He smiled, thinking she spoke poetically, never realizing how true her words really were. Back at the cliffs, Irina stood with Eli watching the sunset. He handed her a small canvas, a painting of her holding a flower, her face bathed in golden light. This is how I see you, he said. She looked at it and felt something deep inside her heart stir, a feeling both strange and beautiful. You see me as human, she whispered. That's what you are, he replied softly. The sisters began to notice that their once cold hearts now beat faster whenever they thought of these two men. It confused them, even scared them because they knew they were not human and could never truly belong here. But the warmth they felt was real. It filled the empty space that once existed inside them. That night, as they sat by the sea, Irina turned to Lunara. I think we're changing, she said quietly. We came here to be punished, but it feels like something else now. Lunara nodded. Maybe Earth wasn't meant to hurt us. Maybe it was meant to show us what love really means. The waves rolled gently at their feet, and the stars above seemed to shine brighter than ever. Neither sister knew what the future would bring, but deep in their hearts they could feel it. Their story with Eli and David was only just beginning. And this time it wasn't fate or punishment guiding them. It was love, quiet but powerful, growing stronger with every heartbeat. The months passed quietly, and the two sisters began to feel more connected to Earth than ever before. Life in the little coastal town felt peaceful. Irina and Lunara worked hard, laughed often, and spent evenings with Eli and David. The four of them shared simple joys, walking along the beach, watching sunsets, and talking about dreams. For the first time, the sisters no longer felt like outsiders. They felt human, alive, and free. But deep inside, they both knew a truth they could never escape. They were not from this world, and one mistake could reveal everything. One afternoon, the town prepared for a summer festival. Lights were hung, Music filled the streets and everyone gathered to celebrate by the sea. Irina helped Martha decorate the flower shop with bright garlands, while Lunara and David worked to fix a stage near the dock. The air was full of laughter and the smell of food. For once, the sisters forgot about their past. They danced, smiled, and joined the crowd as if they had always belonged there. As night fell, fireworks began to light up the sky. Eli stood beside Irina, painting the glowing colors on his canvas. "It's beautiful," he said softly. Irina looked up and whispered, "Yes, it reminds me of home." Eli turned to her, puzzled. "Your home?" She smiled faintly. "It's far away." "Very far?" He didn't press her for answers. He just nodded, sensing something deep behind her words. Then something unexpected happened. A small child slipped near the edge of the dock, falling into the dark water. People screamed, but no one moved fast enough. Without thinking, Irina ran forward and jumped in. The waves were rough and the water was deep. Her instincts took over. The power she had kept hidden for so long suddenly awakened. Her bracelet glowed faintly as she reached the child and lifted him out with strength no human could have. The boy coughed, alive and safe, but everyone had seen the strange light. The crowd fell silent. Whispers began to spread. Someone shouted, "Did you see that? Her hands were glowing." Another said, "No human can move that fast." Martha and Eli rushed to her side. But fear was already growing in the eyes of the people around them. Irina felt her heart drop. She had broken the rule she had promised never to break. Lunara ran to her, realizing what had happened. The two sisters stood frozen as murmurs turned into questions. That night, the town was restless. Some people said the sisters were angels. Others said they were something dangerous. The next morning, a group of townsfolk came to Martha's shop demanding answers. "Who are they?" one man asked angrily. "Where did they come from?" Martha defended Irina, saying she had saved a child's life. But the man replied sharply, "That doesn't change the fact that she's not one of us." Eli and David stayed close to the sisters, refusing to let anyone harm them. They took them away from the crowd and brought them to the lighthouse, a quiet place where they could hide for a while. The sisters sat silently, fear and sadness in their eyes. "We didn't mean to hurt anyone," Lunara whispered. David placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You didn't, you saved someone. That's what matters." But Irina couldn't stop blaming herself. "I was foolish," she said, looking down. "The council warned us not to use our powers. Now everyone knows." Eli knelt beside her. "You don't have to be afraid. You did the right thing. People just don't understand what they fear." His voice was calm, but Irina could see worry in his eyes. As the days passed, the town grew divided. Some believed the sisters were dangerous beings sent to spy on Earth. Others said they were miracles. The tension made the air heavy. Rumors spread that the government might send people to investigate. The sisters knew they couldn't stay hidden for long. One evening, Eli found Irina standing on the cliff looking out at the sea. The wind blew through her hair and her eyes shimmered faintly with their natural alien glow. "You don't have to hide from me," he said softly. "I know you're not like us." She turned to him, shocked. "You knew?" He nodded. "I've seen the way your eyes change when you look at the stars. I don't know where you came from, but I know you're not here to harm anyone." Irina's voice trembled. "If you knew what I really am, would you still care for me?" Eli looked at her gently. "I already do. You saved lives. You brought light into this town. That's all I need to know." For the first time, Irina felt tears on her face, something she had never experienced on Valora. The emotions were overwhelming, yet beautiful. At the same time, Lunara faced her own truth with David. They sat in the workshop as rain poured outside. She hesitated before speaking. "David, there's something you should know. I'm not from this planet. My sister and I were sent here as punishment." David looked at her silently for a moment, then said, "I already guessed you were different, but I don't care where you came from. What matters is who you are now." His words touched her deeply, but peace did not last. A few nights later, bright lights appeared in the sky, a silver glow that only the sisters could recognize. It was a sign from the High Council. "They were being watched. They're calling us back," Irina whispered in fear. "They know we've been discovered." The sky shimmered with energy, and both sisters felt the pull of home. But they no longer wanted to go. Earth had changed them. They had found kindness, love, and a sense of purpose here. The next morning, people gathered again, frightened by the strange light in the sky. Some wanted the sisters to leave. Others begged them to stay. The air was filled with shouting until Eli and David stood before everyone. "They saved your children, your families," Eli said loudly. "They've done nothing but good since they arrived." David added firmly, "If you can't see their hearts, then you don't deserve their kindness." The crowd fell silent. The sisters stood together, their hands clasped. In that moment, they realized something powerful. No matter how the world saw them, they had become part of it. Their exile had turned into something far greater. They had learned love, courage, and sacrifice. As the night came again, the sky shimmered one last time. The voice of the High Council echoed faintly in their minds. "Your time of trial is over. You have learned what you were meant to learn." But instead of fear, they felt peace. They had changed. They were no longer proud aliens from Valora. They were part of Earth's story now. Two souls who had found love in the most unexpected place. They looked at Eli and David, who stood beside them, unafraid. The sisters knew that whatever happened next, they were no longer alone. Their secret was no longer a burden. It was a part of who they were. And though the future was uncertain, their hearts were full of something even the stars could not give them. The quiet, unshakable strength of love. The night sky over the little coastal town was filled with strange silver lights that shimmered softly like stars made of glass. The people watched from their windows in silence, unsure if they were witnessing a miracle or something to fear. But Irina and Lunara knew exactly what it was. The High Council of Valora had come for them. Their punishment on Earth was over. Yet as they stood on the cliffs beside Eli and David, neither sister felt relief. Instead, their hearts felt heavy, torn between two worlds. A soft hum filled the air and a beam of light descended slowly from the sky. It wrapped around the sisters like a warm mist. The voices of the council spoke inside their minds, calm, wise, and distant. "You have completed your time of exile," the voice said. "You have learned the meaning of compassion, humility, and love. Now return to Valora, and your honor will be restored." Irina looked at the glowing light, then at Eli, whose eyes were filled with quiet sadness. She whispered, "If we return, we may never see them again." Lunara's hands trembled. "We've changed. We're not the same as before." The light pulsed softly, waiting for their answer. Eli stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "If they wish to go home, we won't stop them. But please, don't take them if they don't want to go." His words were brave, though he knew he was speaking to powers far beyond his understanding. David stood beside him, his jaw set, his eyes steady. "They belong here now," he said. "They've done more good for this town than anyone else. You can't take that away." The sisters could feel the energy of Valora pulling at them, calling them back to the skies. The familiar hum of their home planet echoed in their hearts. But something stronger anchored them to Earth. Love. Not just romantic love, but the deep, human kind that came from friendship, kindness, and connection. Irina stepped closer to the beam of light and spoke aloud, her voice trembling but clear. "We have seen your wisdom, Council. We have learned from this world, from its struggles and its beauty. But we cannot return." The air grew still. "Here we found what Valora has lost. The warmth of imperfection, the courage to care, and the strength of love." Lunara nodded beside her, tears shining in her eyes. "We came to Earth as punishment, but it became our home. The people here taught us more than we ever could have imagined. We wish to stay, not as visitors, but as one of them." For a long moment, the light did not move. Then the voice of the High Chancellor echoed softly, sounding almost human. "You understand the weight of your choice. If you remain on Earth, you will lose all connection to Valora. You will become mortal, fragile, bound by time, and destined to fade as humans do. Are you certain?" Irina turned to Eli. His face was full of emotion, his eyes glistening. She smiled gently and said, "Yes, I am certain." Then she looked at Lunara, who was holding David's hand. Lunara whispered, "We would rather live one lifetime here with love than eternity without it." The light around them flickered, brighter and brighter, until it filled the whole sky. The wind blew gently, carrying a strange warmth that touched everyone in the town. The people who had once been afraid now watched in awe. The glow that surrounded the sisters slowly faded, and the bracelets they wore dissolved into silver dust. The power that had once connected them to their home was gone. The council's final message echoed faintly in the air. Then so be it. You are no longer a Valora, but your hearts carry its light. Live well, daughters of the stars. And then the sky went dark again. The silver lights vanished, leaving only the soft shimmer of the moon and the sound of waves below. Irina and Lunara stood quietly, breathing the cool night air. They no longer felt the pull of the universe, only the rhythm of their human hearts. Eli gently took Irina's hand and she looked at him with tears in her eyes. "It's over," she whispered. He smiled softly. "No, it's just beginning." Down by the docks, David wrapped his arm around Lunara's shoulders. "You did something brave," he said. She shook her head. "No, we all did. You showed us what courage really means." For a long moment, they all stood together watching the waves crash against the shore. The stars above looked different now, softer, closer, almost like they were smiling down. The following days were peaceful. The townspeople who once feared the sisters now greeted them kindly. They brought flowers, food, and laughter to their small cottage near the harbor. Life returned to normal, but with a quiet sense of wonder. Everyone knew that two extraordinary souls lived among them, though they treated them no differently than before. Irina continued working at the flower shop. She filled the air with color and fragrance, teaching children how each bloom carried a message. Eli often painted her while she worked, capturing the light in her eyes that seemed to hold the glow of another world. Sometimes when customers asked about the silver dust that sparkled faintly on her wrists, she simply smiled and said, "Just a little reminder of where I came from." Lunara stayed at the workshop helping David and Robert. She became known for her calm patience and skill with repairing even the most broken boats. Fishermen trusted her hands, saying she had magic fingers, though no one knew how true that once was. She laughed more often now, her heart light and free. Years passed and the sisters grew older just like everyone else. They learned the beauty of human life, how every moment mattered because nothing lasted forever. They celebrated festivals, helped those in need, and shared stories about stars and distant worlds with children who listened in wonder. One clear night, Irina and Lunara sat by the sea, just as they had when they first arrived. The moonlight shimmered on the water. Irina whispered, "Do you ever miss Valora?" Lunara smiled softly. "Sometimes. But then I look around right at this ocean, these people, this life, and I know we are exactly where we are meant to be." Above them, a single shooting star crossed the sky, leaving a silver trail that glowed for a moment before fading away. Irina watched it and said, "Maybe the council is watching us." Lunara laughed quietly. "If they are, I hope they see we finally understand what it means to live." Eli and David soon joined them on the sand. They sat together in silence, the night breeze cool and gentle. The sisters leaned against the men they loved, listening to the waves and the heartbeat of the earth. For them, this world was no longer strange. It was home. And though their story had begun as a punishment, it ended as something far more beautiful. A lesson that even among the stars, love is the most powerful force of all. The two alien sisters had come to Earth as exiles, but they stayed as humans, carrying within them the light of two worlds, one that taught them pride, and another that taught them love. The wind whispered softly across the sea as if carrying their story into the stars. And somewhere far away in the universe, the people of Valora looked toward Earth and smiled, proud of the two daughters who had found the meaning of life among humankind.